There's something about fantasy games that no other medium can truly replicate. It's not just the magical setting, it's the weight of crossing portals, of living out fates that aren't yours, yet somehow feel like they were made for you. While real life keeps pressing in, these worlds open a door to dream, to fight, to escape. Every mysterious forest, every distant castle, every impossible creature just makes sense in that universe. And for a few hours, nothing matters but the next quest. I'm Jax, and if you're new here, welcome to Play Hunters. If you feel like subscribing to help the channel grow, I'd be incredibly grateful from one gamer to another. But before we begin, if you could choose any game world to call home, which one would it be? I want to know which universe stole your heart enough to make you forget the real world for a while. No more delays, let's jump in. Nine Souls is a dark fable crafted with the precision of a 2D action game and the philosophical weight of a story about rebellion and breaking cycles. The universe draws from Asian mythology, with gods, rituals, and a society ruled by ancient orders that control every aspect of life. You awaken in the middle of ruined technology, trying to understand what drove that world to collapse. Mystery is constant, and the narrative leads you to question everything: faith, obedience, even the very existence of the gods. Combat plays like a side-scrolling version of Sekiro, focusing on timing, parrying, and relentless aggression. It rewards boldness but demands pattern recognition and calm under pressure. Every enemy looks handcrafted, with attacks that require more than reflexes. They demand patience. Boss fights are pure tension, often tied directly to the unfolding narrative and the broken past that slowly surfaces. Even in chaos, the game moves with rhythm, style, and purpose. The art blends tradition and technology, creating landscapes that look like animated paintings, floating cities, abandoned temples, metallic forests. Everything pulses with a duality between spirituality and machinery. The soundtrack is minimal, yet perfectly tuned to a melancholic, reflective tone. As the story progresses, the game becomes something more than just a physical journey. It turns inward, almost like a search for identity in a world that's forgotten its own. Nine Souls is a kind of fantasy that refuses cliches. No elves, no dragons, no flashy spells, just pain, rebellion, and ideological clashes. The combat speaks just as loud as the dialogue. It's poetry in motion, and every hit you land feels like you're not just breaking an enemy's guard, but also shattering the lies of a world pretending to be whole. Elden Ring is the pinnacle of dark fantasy, a massive open world where every hill hides a dungeon, every tower keeps a secret, and every cloaked figure holds a story of tragedy and glory. Grace is lost, the gods have fallen, and it's up to you, a forgotten soul, to decide if there's anything still worth saving. The game doesn't guide or explain, it simply releases you, trusting that curiosity will outmatch fear. Combat follows the refined Souls-like formula, with countless weapons, spells, and styles to suit your approach, but the true impact lies in the freedom. You can ride through poisoned fields, descend into sunken cities, or cross crimson deserts. Nothing stands in your way. The world isn't just big, it's heavy, and with every step, you feel like you're trespassing on forbidden lands, brushing against stories that maybe were never meant to be remembered. The art style merges the sublime with the grotesque. There's beauty in golden trees, horror in silent ruins. Bosses look like nightmares brought to life, with designs that stick in your mind long after the fight ends. And the soundtrack? Quiet when needed, grand when demanded. The narrative is built in whispers, legends, items, ruins that say more than words ever could. You understand in time, but you feel it from the start. Elden Ring isn't just a fantasy game, it's a lesson in humility where every win feels stolen from death and every discovery reminds you why worlds like this are worth getting lost in. Lies of P takes the story of Pinocchio and turns it into a gothic fable about truth, lies, and what it means to be human. The city of Krat, overrun by deranged puppets, feels like a blend of Bloodborne and Victorian literature. It's a world in decay where every corner reveals a society that lost itself chasing perfection. You play as a conscious automaton, forced to choose between obedience and learning to lie, and every choice shifts the story's direction. Combat is tight and technical. Every weapon can be disassembled and rebuilt with different parts, creating unique styles. The parry system demands surgical precision, and the fight rhythm punishes mistakes. But there's room for creativity. You adapt your approach to each enemy, test new combinations, and find unconventional solutions. Bosses are horror spectacles, testing your reflexes, nerves, and memory. The story hits harder than expected. As you edge closer to humanity, the world becomes more complex and more painful. Choices don't just change the ending, they shape how characters treat you and how Pinocchio himself evolves. The aesthetic is heavy, packed with symbolism, rusted metal, dim lanterns, and music box melodies that always seem a little too sad. Lies of P is about lies that protect, truths that wound, and what's left when everything feels like theater. A fantasy where the heart still beats even if it's made of gears. And that makes all the difference. Shadow of the Colossus is a legend in game form, a nearly empty world where silence speaks louder than any soundtrack and every step echoes solitude. You ride through desolate fields, chasing down towering creatures driven by a single goal to defy the gods for a chance to bring someone back. But defeating each Colossus doesn't feel like triumph, it feels like guilt. The fantasy here isn't in power, but in the weight of what you choose to do with it. The Colossi are living puzzles, and combat is more about problem solving than action. Climbing their enormous bodies takes patience, observation, and courage. There are no regular enemies, no loot, no distractions, just you, your horse, and these ancient beings that aren't there to fight but simply to exist. And that changes everything. Every victory is followed by silence, by a slow fall, by an emptiness that's hard to explain. The art is almost minimalist, yet it conveys scale through light, dust, and wind. The environments feel like moving paintings with ruins of a forgotten past. And that very sense of forgetting is where the game draws its strength. It doesn't tell you too much, it makes you feel. The absence of music during long rides, the sound of hooves, the echo inside temples, everything is designed to leave you alone with your thoughts. Shadow of the Colossus is melancholic fantasy. It's about facing giants without knowing if you're saving or dooming someone, a game where every decision weighs heavy, where the emptiness says more than any storyline, and where silence has shape. Tunic begins as a cute little adventure, with a tiny fox in a bright world full of secrets. But that's just the surface. Slowly you realize you're inside something much bigger, a complex puzzle where language is mysterious and progress depends entirely on your curiosity. The game gives no answers, only questions. The fantasy here isn't grand, it's cryptic. Every corner of the map hides something that changes everything. Combat seems simple at first, dodge, shield, attack, but it's surprisingly demanding. Enemies don't forgive mistakes, and every step forward requires attention. But the real heart of the game lies in its secrets. A fragmented manual, written in a language you don't understand, is your guide. But instead of teaching, it teases. Discovering each page becomes part of the journey. The art is light and almost childlike, but hides a stunning complexity. Floating islands, sealed temples, caves filled with forgotten mechanisms. The music is calm but filled with mystery, as if something ancient is just barely asleep. And when you piece things together, unlock shortcuts, or decode a new symbol, it feels like discovering a lost language, a secret shared only between you and the game. Tunic is a fantasy that trusts your intelligence, a quiet, delicate journey full of hidden meaning. It's about exploring without knowing what you're looking for and still finding things that change everything. The Witcher 3 feels like it came from a book you've never read, but somehow always knew existed. A war-torn continent full of crumbling kingdoms, roaming monsters, and people trying to survive in the chaos. But the most striking thing is how everything has a soul. Every village has its stories, every forest holds unique dangers, and every road hides encounters that feel written just for you. It's not just an open world, it's a living one. Combat evolves with alchemy, magic signs, and monsters that demand specific tactics. But what truly grabs you is the weight of your choices. Nothing is black and white. Solve one problem and you create another. Save one town and another may fall. Side quests are as rich as the main story, sometimes even more impactful, and the game forces you to think, not just react. The setting is ridiculously detailed, from market chatter to the distant sound of an incoming storm. The soundtrack deepens the folkloric feel with traditional instruments and ancient melodies that seem passed down through generations. Characters aren't just plot devices, they live their roles. They suffer, laugh, deceive, cry, and you get caught up in it in a way few games can achieve. The Witcher 3 is raw, mature fantasy. A journey not about perfect heroes, but imperfect choices in a world where right and wrong walk side by side. And when it ends, you don't forget it, you carry it. Ashen is a fantasy about rebuilding. A sunless world, faded and forgotten, welcomes you without words or hope. But soon you realize you're here to rekindle something, not just in yourself, but in the world around you. Every step you take isn't just about survival, it's about restoring what was lost. And even without direct dialogue, the game speaks to you constantly through silence, sounds, and scenery. Combat follows the Souls-like style, stamina, dodging, patience, but unlike most in the genre, here you share the journey. Characters appear, fight alongside you, and need your help just as much. It's a mutual connection built through action, not words, that makes each battle feel more personal, and every victory, no matter how small, carry collective weight. The town you rebuild comes alive. Houses rise, NPCs settle in, and the world becomes less hostile as you grow. But danger never fully fades. Dark caves, cursed valleys, and crumbling ruins are everywhere. The emptiness remains, but now it's being slowly filled with life, memory, and meaning. The journey isn't just rebuilding the world, it's rediscovering purpose. Ashen is about creating something where there was only dust, a fantasy that doesn't rely on grand spells or epic prophecies. It grows through quiet gestures, friendships formed in danger, and the quiet certainty that even a broken world can bloom again. Omno feels like stepping into a dream you never want to wake from. No combat, no urgency, no dialogue. It simply invites you to explore. But that simplicity is just the surface. Every corner holds something hidden, something waiting to be found at your pace. You guide a lone traveler, seeking a purpose the game doesn't immediately reveal, and that makes it all the more intriguing. Gameplay centers around traversal and puzzles, unlocking new abilities as you go. Gliding, teleporting, leaping great distances, it's all about reaching new places and uncovering ancient ruins. The creatures you encounter aren't enemies, they're companions. Some watch you, others assist you, and that gives the game a rare sense of connection and harmony. Each environment feels handcrafted and emotionally distinct. From quiet meadows to glowing deserts, nothing feels random. The color palette is precise, never overwhelming, always guiding your eye with intent, and the soundtrack, subtle, calming, moving at your rhythm without rushing you. The game values silence and stillness, something rare. It wants you to pause, breathe, and feel the world before moving forward. Omno is a quiet, reflective kind of fantasy. It doesn't challenge your reflexes, but your sense of wonder. It's about moving forward without knowing why, and realizing along the way that even small steps can be answers. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the kind of fantasy that touches the heart and demands skill. The story begins with a separation and leads you through a broken world where every creature seems to carry its own emotional weight. Ori is small, but everything around them is immense. The trees speak in silence, rivers tell stories, and the wind whispers memories. You don't feel like you're just playing, you're part of something greater. Movement is flawless. Precise jumps, abilities that flow into one another, and challenges that demand focus. Combat, exploration, and puzzles intertwine with impressive natural rhythm. Nothing is random. Every power you gain unlocks paths that were always there, just waiting to be understood. It makes you want to return, to revisit, to understand every corner of the map. The visuals are breathtaking. One of the most beautiful 2D games ever made, full of vivid colors, lighting effects, and animations that look like living paintings. The sound matches every moment, delicate when needed, powerful when required. Nothing feels excessive, everything feels intentional. From emotional reunions to a quiet background of falling leaves, everything speaks. Orid's Highway and the Will of the Wisps is both delicate and brutal, a tale of loss and growth, where fantasy amplifies very human feelings. Finishing this game feels like closing a book you loved, already missing it before the last page turns. Witchfire is the kind of dark fantasy that doesn't ask permission. It throws you into a world where faith became a weapon and witchcraft a living curse. You're an immortal Praetorian, forged by the church to hunt witches in a land ravaged by unholy rituals. There's no chivalry in this war, only gunpowder, sorcery, and death on every side. It feels like you've arrived too late. The world's already fallen, and all that's left is to clean up what's left. But behind the fierce gunfights and devastating spells lies a well-designed roguelite core. Each run into cursed territories brings crueler enemies, but also new artifacts, spells, and weapons with unique effects. You die, you come back stronger, learn something, push a bit further. The game isn't about mastering everything at once. It's about surviving madness one run at a time. Its progression urges you to keep going, even when the world is falling apart around you. The environments are stunningly horrific. Villages consumed by rituals, forests that breathe malevolence, fortresses where the sky bleeds, it all drips with dread. Every area feels like a gothic painting come alive to tear out your soul. And while you fight, the world seems to watch, to judge, to whisper. There's a constant sense of being cursed, as if the land itself is against you. Witchfire doesn't just challenge you, it haunts you. This is a game about weight, not just in combat, but in atmosphere, in the untold story, in the silence of fallen statues. A decaying fantasy where heroism no longer exists, and the supernatural already won. But still, you fight. Not to save the world, but because something inside you refuses to let it rot without resistance. Witchfire is dirty, cruel, and unforgettable, just like dark fantasy should be. Hogwarts Legacy delivers what once seemed impossible, living your own tale in the wizarding world. But instead of retelling old stories, it throws you decades before any famous book, opening space for a brand new narrative full of possibilities. You play as a newly arrived student with a rare gift, the ability to control an ancient, unstable magic. It all starts in mystery, and that mystery pulls you forward like an invisible thread, guiding you through hallways, forests, and secrets buried for centuries. The freedom is real. You choose your house, learn spells, mix potions, grow magical plants, and build your own hidden room. The combat system is dynamic and creative spells interact with each other, require strategy, and shift based on your enemies. You can go full offense, lean into forbidden spells, or focus on defense and control, but it's all up to you. The game doesn't push, it suggests. You build your path. Beyond Hogwarts, the world opens up. Villages, enchanted forests, swamps, catacombs, each zone has its own identity and rewards curiosity. It's not about rushing through quests, stopping, observing, and exploring feels natural. Magical creatures follow their own rhythms, NPCs share personal stories, and the map is full of details that turn locations into memories. It's not just about what you do, it's about where, how, and why. Hogwarts Legacy fulfills a lifelong dream, but doesn't rely on that alone. It goes beyond nostalgia and builds a rich fantasy with deep systems and a world that feels alive. Whether you know this universe or not, once you're in, it feels like home. And when you leave, you'll want to return, just to walk the halls in silence like revisiting a memory. Baldur's Gate 3 begins with a threat already living inside you. A mysterious parasite is implanted in your body, and instead of killing you, it awakens strange new powers. The world around you is unraveling into war, betrayal, and faction conflict, and the only thing you know for sure is that something terrible is coming, from outside and within. It's not just about winning fights or completing quests, it's about surviving while your very sense of self crumbles. Combat follows the classic rules of Dungeons & Dragons, but it's all visual, clear, and powerful. Positioning, rolls, turn-by-turn choices, everything matters. You can blow up barrels with arrows, push enemies off cliffs, or summon allies mid-battle. Every class and party setup opens new strategies. The game doesn't hold your hand. It invites you to think, experiment, and embrace the chaos. The world is massive and passionately written. Cities, caves, and wildlands hide stories, moral dilemmas, and characters with pasts, pain, and purpose. There are no right answers, only consequences. And that freedom is real. You can resolve conflicts through diplomacy, lies, or ruthless violence. This isn't clean, epic fantasy. It's gray, political, and more human than magical. Baldur's Gate 3 is more than just a fantasy game. It proves that narrative freedom, deep systems, and good writing can thrive together. You're not just playing an adventure, you're living a full campaign, like the best moments at a tabletop RPG. And by the end, you realize the journey wasn't about saving the world, it was about discovering who you became along the way. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 opens with a chilling promise every year. A divine entity known as the Painter writes down an age, and everyone of that age dies, without exception. You lead the 33rd expedition, one final attempt to reach this being and break the cycle. The world isn't just dangerous, it's doomed. This is fantasy painted in strokes of apocalypse, madness, and desperation. Combat mixes turn-based tactics with reflex-driven timing. Every hit demands precision. Every defense could save your life. But it's more than mechanics, it's rhythm, like a dance with death. Each ability bursts with color, distortion, and energy. The atmosphere is thick, as if every fight were a ritual. There's no rush, only intention. Every battle feels significant, as if facing an enemy is an act of rebellion against fate itself. The world looks like a living painting, each location drawn from a surrealist canvas. Liquid-painted forests, faded cities, creatures that seem too broken to exist. Beauty blends with grotesque in ways that unsettle. And it all ties into the story, a universe where art and death are inseparable, where aesthetic isn't just a style, it's the spine of the tragedy. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 isn't about defeating evil, it's about questioning what it means to defy a fate already written in ink. It's poetic, tragic, and full of mystery. It feels like walking through an art book that mourns. This isn't fantasy to escape reality, it's fantasy that forces you to face the absurd with a sword in one hand and your heart in the other. Lords of the Fallen doesn't just give you a world split between light and darkness, it traps you between them. The realm of the living and the dead coexist, and death is never the end, just a new beginning. When you fall, you wake up in the umbral, a shadowy reflection of reality, where everything is more cruel, twisted, and unpredictable. This duality is the core of the game. Every step is taken in fear, not just of what's ahead, but of what might emerge when everything goes dark. Combat is tense, brutal, and weighty. Every weapon feels heavy, every enemy demands focus, and each fight is a test of survival. But the most intriguing part is how the umbral mechanic reshapes gameplay. You can enter death willingly to explore hidden parts of the living world, risking everything for greater rewards. It changes the tempo, courage and greed walk hand in hand, and the fear of dying becomes part of the challenge. The environments swing between decaying beauty and mythological horror. Crumbling castles, infested cathedrals, corrupted forests, and world-crossing paths that feel like visual rituals. The world doesn't just aim to impress, it wants to smother, to squeeze, to crush you slowly. And when things seem calm, the game reminds you that something is always lurking at the edge of reality. Umbral isn't just a place, it's a living curse, a constant threat. Lords of the Fallen borrows familiar Souls-like elements, but rebuilds everything around its two worlds idea. It's not about dying and coming back, it's about dying and continuing. Every bit of progress feels like ripping victory from fate itself. It's the kind of game that breaks you, but does it with style, bravery, and a world that never forgets the burden of walking the line between light and shadow. Steelrising reimagines the French Revolution, trading muskets for gears and soldiers for deadly automatons. Paris is choking under the rule of a mad king commanding mechanical legions. You're a rebellious creation made to dance between destruction and freedom. The city burns in metallic silence, and hope rests on a creature who, heartless as it may be, carries the weight of revolution. The gameplay blends Souls-like mechanics with agile movement. Jumps, quick dodges, and electric strikes turn battles into choreographed duels. The enemies are grotesque machines crafted with bizarre creativity, each one like a twisted, functional horror sculpture. And when you take them down, it feels like you've destroyed a symbol of tyranny, not just a foe. Every fight sends a message, and every weapon is a tool of liberation. Paris becomes a silent protagonist. Its empty streets, warped palaces, and automaton-filled alleys create a scene frozen in time. The contrast between classic beauty and futuristic despair makes everything unsettling. Walking through these places feels like exploring a museum in flames, where every statue might move and every shadow could kill. The world isn't just broken, it was rebuilt to oppress, and you are the crack in the system. Steelrising is more than a stylized retelling of history. It's a tale of insurrection, told through iron and sparks. The fantasy isn't in spells, but in the chance to shatter chains, even when they're made of steel. It's a game that screams revolution without saying a word, and each step toward the king's palace writes a new line in a story no one dared to tell. Ghost of a Tale may look like a fable, but it hides a world filled with pain, loneliness, and quiet resistance. You play as a small bard in a kingdom ruled by soldier rats and systems of oppression. There are no grand epics or explosive battles, just the need to escape, hide, and search for answers. The fantasy here is silent, built on fragments of a broken world still pulsing with forgotten stories. The gameplay leans on stealth, patience, and observation. There's no direct combat, only alternate paths, disguises, hidden keys, and subtle decisions. Each area is a puzzle, and every step demands awareness. What makes it so powerful is the contrast between your delicate character and the brutality around him. That constant tension creates a rhythm that's more intimate, more human, more real. The world building is incredibly rich. Damp castles, suffocating forests, secret tunnels, and crumbling libraries set the stage like pages from a melancholic fairy tale. The details are charming, yet unsettling. The miniature architecture hides a heavy emotional weight, and the nearly silent soundtrack follows each moment like the world itself is honoring the fragility of what's being told. Ghost of a Tale doesn't try to be grand, it chooses to be honest. A small story, but full of soul, a fantasy without exaggeration, built with care, poetry, and truth. It's the kind of game that touches you slowly, with no rush, and when it ends, it leaves behind a quiet void, like saying goodbye to a friend only you knew existed. Black myth Wukong is born from an ancient legend, but it takes shape as something fierce, beautiful, and unpredictable. Inspired by the classic Journey to the West, the game casts you as a half-man, half-monkey warrior locked in a war against gods, monsters, and illusions. But this isn't just a retelling, it's a journey that tests faith, courage, and identity, where every defeated creature tears off a piece of both the world and yourself. Combat is fast, technical, and brutal. Each enemy demands focus, and your ability to transform into different creatures brings surprising gameplay twists. Instead of a fixed style, the game offers fluid possibilities: vanish in smoke, summon clones, manipulate the environment with your legendary staff. It feels like you're channeling something primal, a force that doesn't need armor, only control and instinct. Mythological China comes alive with haunting fidelity, lush landscapes, sacred forest, forgotten temples, and celestial realms overflowing with secrets. The game doesn't just build a world, it invites you to walk through it with reverence. Nothing feels random. Every detail, every wall, every gust of wind in the leaves carries cultural and spiritual weight. And even when chaos explodes on screen, there's always a silence beneath it, watching. Black myth Wukong is about transcendence, about fighting, falling, and rebuilding. But it's also about the past, about stories passed down through centuries gaining new voice. A game that defies expectations, not just with graphics or combat, but with heart. And when it ends, you realize you didn't just face monsters, you faced legends. And somehow, you became part of them too. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom doesn't try to reinvent the world, it expands it. With the sky as your new limit, you return to Hyrule, now fractured, suspended, and full of mystery. The kingdom's tears aren't just symbolic, they fall on a people trying to rebuild, facing ruins of the past and dangers rising from the depths. Everything you once knew feels changed, bigger, lonelier, more beautiful. Freedom is absolute. You don't just climb mountains, you craft solutions. With the fusion system, you can build vehicles, weapons, bridges, and even absurd traps. Creativity isn't optional, it's essential. The world rewards those who think outside the box, who take risks, who experiment, and that turns every journey into something personal, shaped by trial, error, and unexpected discoveries. The skies and underground reveal pieces of deep mythology, forgotten civilizations, ancient relics, and creatures that seem to whisper untold stories. The soundtrack is subtle, the silence part of the adventure. There's no rush, just an invitation to watch, explore, and feel. The world doesn't guide you with arrows, it lures you with mysteries, and when you answer, something shifts inside you. Tears of the Kingdom is more than a sequel. It's a tribute to curiosity, a reminder that you don't need a map to find something great, just the courage to face the unknown and keep going. In this broken kingdom, it's your hands that stitch the path forward, step by step, until every tear becomes a memory. Middle-earth's Shadow of War throws you into a war that never really ends, not just between realms, but within the hero himself. Burdened by corrupting power, you march through armies and fortresses, trying to rally forces against the Dark Lord. But the more you win, the more you lose. This isn't just a war against orcs, it's the question of becoming what you hate to destroy it. The gameplay dances between brutality and control. Fights are intense, but it's the Nemesis system that changes everything. Enemies remember you, hunt you, seek revenge, create their own arcs in your story. Every loss becomes a new tale, every win might birth a traitor. And through that cycle, Middle-earth comes alive, not through script, but through consequence. Strongholds, deserts, corrupted valleys, all designed for spectacle. Yet even in all this grandeur, the game finds room for personal, darker moments, alliances born of desperation, loyalty shattered by greed, quiet sacrifices in the chaos. This isn't pure fantasy, it's a tale of war and obsession, where good and evil blur with every choice. Shadow of War is about power, and the price it demands, a game that blends revenge, conquest, and tragedy in equal parts. It gives you the tools to win, but make sure you understand every victory takes something from you. No one leaves a war like this clean. You just choose how many scars you're willing to carry when it ends. Oblivion Remastered isn't just a visual update, it's the return of a fantasy pillar. The story begins with an emperor's assassination and the rise of demonic portals threatening all of Tamriel. You're pushed into the heart of an epic tale where choices don't just shape the world, they shape who you become. Everything returns stronger, total freedom, hidden mysteries, and the feeling of living a legendary tale. Combat has been refined, and classic systems polished without losing charm. Magic is dangerous and versatile again, and the ability to craft unique spells returns as a core mechanic. Exploring guilds, cursed caves, and forgotten beasts feels like rediscovering an old love. The game honors the past while delivering comfort and new fire to a fresh generation. The landscapes remain grand, now in high definition, vibrant forests, distant castles, and cities breathing fantasy. Walking through Cyrodiil has never felt so alive. The emotional score and dynamic weather make every step feel purposeful. It's a world that doesn't need to shout, it simply exists. Vast, mysterious, and alive, waiting like it always knew you'd come back. Oblivion Remastered is a reunion with the impossible. a game that defined a generation, now reborn without losing its soul. This is the kind of fantasy that never grows old, it just sleeps until it's called again. And when it wakes, it reminds you why you fell in love with RPGs to begin with. Now I want to know, what's your all-time favorite fantasy game? Drop it in the comments, I'm really curious to see your picks. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single tip. Oh, and check out the video with the best medieval games coming in 2025 and 2026. It's absolutely unmissable. Big hug, good gaming, and see you tomorrow.